Hi, folks. Thank you for joining us after the premiere of this wonderful story of recovery. Camera looks overexposed, doesn't it? It does. It's kind of weird. Maybe there's a way I can fix that. Ooh, too much. It's a little better. Maybe there. Yeah, I guess. All right. Sorry, folks. Now I see that Ruth Taylor is here, Viola's here, April, and and Chrissy is here. We are, Chrissy. We've been doing recovery stories a long time. We have over 60 stories in 60 recovery stories in the recovery playlist. It's called Journey from Addiction to Recovery. And it's really it is very uplifting, but it isn't all that new. We've been doing recovery stories for over a couple of years now. And I think they're just vitally important because they're good news. There's hope, and that's a big deal, don't you think? I think so. That hope and understanding and that realizing what's behind addiction and that recovery is a possible thing. That's a big deal. So I have a little bit to share with you guys before we get going too far. I see we have 17 people in the room right now. Very welcome to you all. Be sure to give us a thumbs up and thank you for being here. So I wanted to talk a little bit about addiction and recovery and talk about some of the key things that sometimes get missed. There's a lot of people out there who think they understand drug addiction and recovery, but there's key things that often get missed. Addiction is rarely about the drugs themselves. Drugs are usually the symptom, not the root cause. Behind most addictions are things like trauma, untreated mental health struggles, grief, loneliness, or pain people never learned how to cope with. When someone is using drugs, many times they're not trying to get high as much as trying to get relief. If we only focus on the substance and ignore the pain underneath it, we're missing the real problem. Recovery is not just about quitting drugs. Stopping the substance is only the beginning. Real recovery means rebuilding an entire life, learning new coping skills, repairing relationships, finding purpose, and often learning how to live without numbing emotions for the first time in years. That process takes time, support, and patience, and it rarely happens in a straight line. Another thing people often miss is that relapse is not the same as failure. Addiction changes the brain, especially the parts that control impulse, reward, and decision making. Many people relapse during recovery, but that doesn't erase the progress they've made. For many, relapse is a part of the learning process that eventually leads to long term recovery. People also underestimate how much stigma makes addiction worse. Shame keeps people silent. Fear of judgment keeps people from asking for help. When we treat addiction as a moral failure instead of a health issue, we push people further into isolation, which is exactly where addiction grows stronger. Recovery is more common than people think. Millions of people recover from addiction and go on to live healthy, meaningful lives. But recovery usually happens quietly. The headlines focus on the tragedies, not the victories. So the public sees the worst outcomes and assumes that recovery is rare, when in reality, it happens every day. If we want to truly address addiction, we have to look deeper, beyond the drugs, beyond the stereotypes, and toward the human beings who are trying to heal. So, I have missed a whole bunch of talk here, I see. Stacy says, hi, Glenn and everyone. Welcome, Stacy and Ruth. Charlene is here. Hi, Charlene. I'm so glad you're doing recovery stories. Hi, Glenn and everyone. The new addiction recovery. I love the recovery stories. Yes, always hope. Always hope. Yes. Hope and prayers. I had to wake up. And face life. Stop running. Okay, there we go. Yeah, that sounds. That's a good way to put it. Riss says drug and alcohol stopped working for me. Or you stopped working for them. Maybe. I see April Smith. Thank you so much, April. I appreciate that very much. It means a lot. It really does. I will be seeing April next week in Memphis. Jenna Martinez says, good evening from Puerto Rico. Namaste, Jeanette. LV Mad. Okay, Jeanette, I don't know what LV Mad VOS means. Should I? I might need a little guidance. Kimberly says, it's on believing in yourself and starting a new life. Absolutely. Risk. We just wasn't fun anymore. Got old and tired. It gets harder and harder to bounce back as you age. Yeah, it does. And that's just part of the nature of getting older. Harder to bounce back. Also easier to see through nonsense. Easier to focus on what really matters. Easier to prioritize in a more substantial way. So there's that. There's a good trade-off. And, grandkids. There's that. Kimberly says gratitude and healing, for sure. So who else is in the room? Do we have any new guests in the room? Robert, you out there? Who else is here? Where is Brenda? Where is Brad and Carla giving me grief? On a Saturday night, maybe they're... Well, Brad could have turned in already, I guess. I don't know. April says, recovery was so much easier than I expected. God literally removed my cravings. It's so hard to explain, but life is so much better when you're sober. It's the only way to live. I think maybe there could be something to having done some bit of life not sober that really hammers home the value of sober. Does that make sense? Am I making this up, folks? Is that in line with y'all's experiences? That's cool, Kimberly. Watch the last series of Recovery. It's really kind of a ongoing series. We we get new recovery stories when we do a summit. Typically, there's some recovery stories, some fentanyl stories, some other stories like cannabis-induced psychosis or domestic violence, human trafficking, all kinds of topics. Makes sense. You mean the part about sober seeming much more awesome when you've had a little period without it, when you've really got something terrible to compare it to, that kind of thing. It seems like if someone who only knows a sober life, they're not going to have any point of reference to alternatives. They're not going to have any way to recognize how much better sober is than not. Excellent job too, Glenn. What? Stigma is culling people. There they go. The dogs. Stigma is culling people. What do I do with that, Chrissy? I don't know. Stigma drives people into isolation, like I said. And that isolation really fuels addiction because you're isolated. The opposite of addiction is connection, people tell me. And I think connection is such a big thing. Stacy says on your work. Thank you. Thank you very much. Viola says, hey, doggy. I swear the dogs know when I'm doing this. And they're much more likely to bark while I'm doing this than any other time of day. It's peculiar. So, April, Kimberly, I am going to be in Memphis soon. Anything I need to know that you can tell me here in this public forum? I feel like there's a whole lot going on in preparation for the summit and for the surrounding events that are going to be happening as well. Rewatch the fentanyl series. That's a big job. There's so many of those stories. There's we're over 330 now. So who else is here? Anybody have any questions for me or for Texas Pictures or about Texas Pictures, our channel, whatever? So what I talked about at the beginning? Some of the key things that the general public needs to understand about addiction that they don't seem to. What kind of things can you guys think of that that the general public gets wrong about addiction or about recovery? The stigma thing is a big one. But what else is out there? What else? What other kinds of things do people really need to be more aware of, better understanding about regarding addiction and recovery? What are some of the things that I missed, or what are some of the things that the general public misses about that? That you guys, we have a few people that are in recovery in the audience. I know. Got some insight you could share? Well, is still going to be happening because of the weather. The Chandler Wells, Chrissy says, there are a lot of geniuses who struggle with emotional processing and struggle with substance. Perhaps therapy should be for everyone, not just a luxury. I personally love the Life Recovery Bible. Should I know about the Life Recovery Bible? How does what is the Life Recovery Bible? How does that compare to, I don't know, the King James version? I have a Bible devotional for men thing. Brenda says addicts have human emotions just like everyone else, and their feelings can be hurt. Of course. And like everyone else, they want comfort. They want a little bit of respect, of attention, of consideration. They respect. So cool is kind of like when people can't get in recovery and they end up in worse situations, even when they want the help. Ruth says one of the stigma things, one of the misconceptions is that you can just quit and walk away. It's a battle every day to stay sober. Yeah, that you can just quit and walk away. Well, no, it doesn't. It doesn't work that way. You have to get in a place in your mind, and getting to that place in your mind is a challenge. Brenda says she loves her recovery Bible. So tell me a little bit about that, folks. How is a recovery Bible special compared to what makes it different? Jeanette says support is a key factor. My son told me he would have never made it alone. Yeah, support is critical. Having a bit of accountability. There's the support thing is complex in some ways because it's having someone that you're accountable to, and at the same time having someone that's rooting for you. And so there's a great dynamic to it. And that if you achieve whatever level of success you achieve, you feel like you can share that with your support system, your sponsor, your group, your whatever. But having that's a big deal. And Kimberly says this group is big support. Yeah, we certainly try to be. We want to be. We're here for you guys any way we can. It's important for people to help each other. I got a call from someone yesterday looking for input about what he could do to help in his recovery. He's weaning off of methadone and Padusa. Padusa. Interesting name. Thank you for being here. Glad you're here. Brenda says Recovery Bible is put out by Celebrate Recovery. It breaks down people in the Bible who suffered from addiction and alcoholism. It also has stories of modern day people who have found recovery. Well, that's awesome. I wasn't aware of that. But that not doing it alone, that's such a big deal. Viola says naysayers motivated me. Family said I couldn't stop smoking pot and definitely didn't think I could stop smoking cigarettes. Conquered both. Good job. Liberating, isn't it? It is NLT second edition is the one I like. NLT. I don't know what NLT means, Chrissy. I'm sure I should, but I don't. Kimberly says, Grandma Viola, I am proud of you. But it's I'm addicted to cigarettes. And Padisha, I don't recognize your name. Have you been in the group before? Have we heard from you before, or could this be your first time? And by the way, folks, thumbs up, please. I see we have 14 people in the room, and we've got 8 thumbs up. So, yes, you're new, or yes, you've been here before. Yeah, I look at your name, Padusa, and I want to turn it into the word Russia, just because everything but the R is there. I think. So we haven't seen Midwest Mama today. Midwest Mama, are you with us? Been here before. I forget. I'm kind of an old guy. Viola says hello, but if you're new, okay. I binge watch your videos. We hear from people who do that kind of often, and I can see that they're well suited. Let's do 3. Let's do 4 or 5. And in doing that, you know, I think in most of our series, there's a story that has something in it that anyone can identify with, but it might take watching 2 or 3 stories to find that thing. And finding that thing that you identify with, maybe Maybe it's that the victim was your age or your son or daughter's age or whatever. Shanda Henling. Hi, Glenn. You do a wonderful job with with your channel. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate you being here and appreciate your comment and certainly appreciate you for watching the channel. Is this your first time to join us in a live event? Babil conceded. Viola, congratulations. They are both hard to overcome. I said I'll be an old lady smoking my Mary Jane and my cigarettes, but God had other plans for me. 13 years clean. 13 years? That's awesome. Kimberly doesn't like that term binge watching. Well, I guess it could conjure up thoughts of like binge drinking, and certainly we don't want to be doing that. What about marathon watching? Maybe that's maybe that's a better term. Janelle Martinez says my son told me without my support he would never recovered. 9 years doing great. That's awesome. So Jeanette, it seems like earlier you had a post that had the word MAD in it, MADD, like Mothers Against Drunk Driving. Are you connected with him some kind of way? Congratulations to you, Babbly. And Paducah says, I have siblings who are addicted to drugs. 2 siblings have died from overdoses. Hey, 2 siblings. That's horrendous. Okay, marathon. What binge watching seems okay too. It doesn't seem that bad. That is terrible about your siblings though. That's got to be, and it's a weird, there's weird elements to grief for siblings because typically what'll happen is when you have a loss like that, when people find the courage to talk to you about it, to ask you about it, the typical thing that they'll ask is something like, well, how's your mama doing? Not how you're doing. And it's just not knowing what to say. It's just not knowing. But the Chrissy, the thumbs up button, I don't know. I never see one of these from you guys' perspective. So I don't know. I think it ought to be right underneath the video down here somewhere. There ought to be a row of icons and there'd be a thumbs up and stuff like that. But back to producer. There's there's a there's a story that's it's one of the older stories in our fentanyl series. It's called Siblings, Cousins, and Friends. And what it is it's a story that's kind of put together from a group of stories, a group of interviews that are parts of other stories that we put together because they're all interviews with siblings, cousins, and friends. And so you might find that you might find that one interesting. That's the title. Siblings, cousins, and friends. You should be able to search for the title and find it. Shonda Henley says, I watch everything you put on your channel. I get disappointed when I click on one just to realize I already watched it. Well, I hope that doesn't happen too often. We try to get 2 or 3 stories out a week, but a lot of that depends on a lot of variables. It depends on what we have. If we're like next week, we're going to be in Memphis recording stories for a few days, but during that time, we're not going to be producing as much because we're not going to be editing. We're going to be recording. And so, like the stories from Memphis, you might not start seeing them for a month after we record them or several months. Or in Chrissy's case, longer than that. Kimberly says, Brenda, I talked to my lady client and she told me that they wasn't together, but I hear cry for help. Okay. Chandler, on my screen, the like thumbs up button is just under the end of the microphone used to connect it to the PC, not the end Glenn is speaking into. So somewhere around here, right? Is that about right? Kim, Kimberly says, Brenda, I've been trying calling my lady client at in the motel off of Brooks Road in Memphis, I presume. Shanda Henley. So have you seen, you said that you watch everything you put on your channel. So have you seen some of the recovery stories, some of the domestic violence stories, some of the human trafficking stories, any of the American Peace Officer series? We have a whole series of stories. I say a whole series. There's probably I feel like there's 7 or 8 stories in there. Chrissy says siblings get survivor's guilt. Yeah, they certainly can. That's terrible, and because the siblings don't get the attention that the parent or parents typically get. At there is there's much more likely to be some rallying to come out in support of the parents who've lost a loved one than siblings. The kind of support that siblings can expect is someone asking, "Is there anything I can do to help your mom?" That kind of thing. It's weird. The bark was probably Tucker. Tucker barks a lot for no good reason. That's the downside is you don't give the bark any credibility because it happens all the time for no reason. I'm new to the chat, but not the channel. Babil conceded, and we'll just go with that. I'm new to the chat, but not the channel. I'm a subscriber. I watch faithfully because it helps me with my sobriety, seeing it from our families and friends who love us and want us to get better. So you're seeing some of the recovery stories too, I hope. I feel like there's this that the recovery stories are just kind of neglected. That they don't enjoy the same level of interest as stories of loss from fentanyl or or some of the stories like human trafficking stories and cannabis induced psychosis stories. They attract more attention, but in the recovery stories, there's messages of hope. And the human trafficking stories also are, in some ways, recovery stories because they are the trafficking experience is behind the storyteller. They've moved on, they've advanced. You know what I mean? Brenda says, Chandler, I have loads of survivor's guilt from loss of sibling and active fentanyl use. I use writing and journaling to deal with my survivor's guilt. I bet either of these would help you. Yeah, Chrissy, you could write. You could do that. I don't mean speech to text. I mean commit. Write something. I think that's in you, Chrissy. Tucker has a reason to bark. He's just too smart to let you know what that reason is. Yeah. I'm going to go with nope. That ain't it. Padusa says, I see a lot of recovery stories. Yeah, the recovery stories, they're dear to me. One of the great things about the recovery stories is with other stories, particularly the fentanyl series, we get comments from viewers who talk about how they have a loved one who is in addiction, or the viewers are people that are new in recovery and they're new in recovery, and seeing the fentanyl stories helps them stay there. And for me, when I see those kinds of comments, I can tell the commenter, hey, there's also this series of recovery stories, and I bet there's some people in the stories, some of the stories are way close to your experience. So, Chrissy Chandler Wells says, I have over 600 notes. That has not surprised me at all, Chrissy. I'm not surprised. That's awesome. That's progress, though. That note taking and it's a great way to organize your thoughts and stay on a clear, focused path. And so that's wonderful. I think that's great. When I was in college, I took notes during class, and for the most part, with most classes, that was it. Didn't do the reading assignments like I was supposed to. But I took notes thoroughly, and I never looked at them again. But that process of really thinking out what you're hearing and translating it into something you write helped me remember it. Brenda says, Chandler, way to go. 600 notes is music to my ears. You just keep on taking notes and getting stronger each day. Coloring helps me focus, says Kimberly. I can see that. I can get lost in doing that. That it's a there's quick reward. It's productive. It's kind of mind clearing, I think. Thanks for the warm welcome. Babil says, I feel like Babil might be the right way to say that. It says, thanks for the warm welcome, Brenda Miller, and I will. Thanks again. Brenda had said, Babil, thank you. I need all the prayers I can get. God knows I am a problem child, but he loves me anyway. What number are you on, Brenda? 556? 5. 6? 6. You can get lost in it. Yeah, I imagine so. Bye, Viola? Bye? Is that you leaving? Is that kind of bye? Or is that a whoopsie and didn't mean to send that? Or what? I don't know. April, are you still here? Look at this. April has one of these now, too. How cool is that? 555. See, Brenda, I was so close. I said 555 or 556, and then kind of leaned toward 556. Me being the eternal optimist, you know. Kimberly, do you have one of the Mandela's coloring books? They're a ton of fun. Uh, Mandela's coloring books. Is that like a brand name? Is that I don't. All right, this is a whole new topic. We're talking about coloring books now. I don't know anything about that. Seems it seems definitely therapeutic. They're challenging, but I love them, says Brenda. Okay, very cool. Good lottery number for tonight is 555. Before you know it, Brenda, you're going to be at 666, and that's going to be creepy, isn't it? Midwest Mama. Is anyone, Brenda, anybody heard from Midwest Mama? Just kind of curious how she's doing. She wasn't doing so good last time, and I was hoping to kind of follow up with her. Chad, I have a question. Did recovering sinners help with your sobriety? Well, that's a good one. That's a great question. Recovery centers, and from the people that I've interviewed, my sense is that there's no good answer for that. That there are people who swear by recovery centers and people who feel like it didn't do anything for them at all. Well, gosh, Brenda, you're just going to skip a day? You're going to count 665 2 days and go. So it's also a number, you know. Brenda says, I haven't heard from Midwest. I'm praying for her and hope she shows up here soon. She knows we love her. For sure. Definitely. And for those of you who weren't in the last live event, Midwest was having some difficulty. April says different things when for different people. That's for sure. Yeah, yeah. There are people who swear by recovery centers, and there are people who say no. Like our storyteller tonight, she had tried a lot of rehabs and things like that, but it wasn't until she hit that spot where she made that promise. I mean, different things work for different people as far as treatment goes and or recovery. Yeah. That's what I thought you meant. Did I read it bad? Yeah, I probably did read it bad because it's kind of written kind of peculiar. But that's what I understood it to mean the first time. So good job. Recovery. The thing about recovery, I think one of the most important things about recovery is that people need to understand that it is well within reach as long as you're taking a breath. It's there. And I know that in a lot of ways that's oversimplifying it, but ultimately, once you understand it's within reach, and you hit that spot in your brain that says, all right, I'm done. The rest is just following instructions. And one of the big instructions, our storyteller tonight talked about that too, is get away from those people you think are your friends. I gave him a little shouting at. Maybe that'll help. The Chandler Wells, I don't know if my response ever showed up about the calling ageism for the young. It's been really hard to get recovery, even if they're willing. And they can criteria and they have a court order. One of the things that strikes me as a really influential element of recovery is money. Recovery centers need funding to survive, just like any operation does. You can't you can't work for free and keep working for long unless you've got some trust fund or whatever, that something that you can count on to subsidize what you're doing. So it's a peculiar dynamic. I've thought it might be a good story to go spend a night in a recovery place or rehab or something like that. Doesn't mean I'm going to do it, but it seems like it could be a worthwhile thing to do. There's a oh, I don't. No. The Recovery Center, Thomas Reeve. Danny Ivy and I think another storyteller from the series we recorded in Mississippi that talk about it's not celebrate recovery. I don't remember. Anyway, now I have to find out. Brenda says, now I have to find out, is there a recovery center near me? Yeah, I got a call. I mentioned before, I got a call from someone who's looking for some guidance to get involved and to get some support. He's tapering off of methadone and was having a pretty hard time. And so I put him in touch with a couple of people, but I found myself kind of lost about what to tell him. I just wanted to help him. I see I missed some stuff. April says she's been clean since 2011. Any addiction is not good. I'm also addicted to food. I'm working on that too. Okay, so food's not addiction because they're like alcohol addiction. There is no I need some to survive element to alcohol or to cocaine or methamphetamine or whatever. But there is I need some to survive to food. And maybe that's oversimplifying it, but it's, just seems challenging. Recovery centers can help depending on the approach. Counselors, support afterwards is crucial. Yeah, support is such a big thing. Connection. And the support creates a dynamic that's really a two-way thing. Like having a sponsor or whatever, having that two-way accountability and support where not only is there someone who will give you a hard time if you do the wrong thing, but they will give you praise and they will feel a reward themselves when you do the right thing. It's a cool dynamic. But Bill says I did have its pros. You can get high in the facility. What? I feel like I missed something. It did have its pros. You could get high in the facility. I believe that you have to want to stop. If you're not at that point, I don't care how many facilities you go to, you have to be ready. And that's totally reasonable. That if you're not ready, you being in a facility like that could be keeping someone who is ready from getting in. Thank you for being here, Padusa. Have a good night. I hope to see you here again soon. Chandler, are you from Vancouver or Washington State? No. Chandler's from Austin. At least that's where she's at now. So, but Bill, what were you talking about? That it had its pros. You can get high in the facility. I feel like I definitely missed something. April says she's never been to a rehab. Okay. Okay, it looks like I missed some stuff. The Chandler Wells is actually there's an angel mom. Her name is Charity in Washington State. She makes coloring books out of our angels. If you like, I think she does it every year. Yeah, and I met someone who does something similar in Virginia. Wonderful person, just very much full of love, and got this great reward from doing that. April's been clean since 2011. We talked about that. Any addiction is not good. Okay. Let's see what I've missed here. Chrissy says, I've been doing it here for a couple of years. I'm on my 20th person right now. I've been doing it free for a couple of years. 20th person right now. She made it into a rehab facility. I don't have money. I just followed the big book and I kind of lost a person to me. I live in Texas, but I used to live in the Northwest and California, originally Silicon Valley. Brenda says, I always learned a bunch and made lots of friends in treatment centers, but it never stuck when I got home until God smacked my butt into recovery. Yes, the God smacked my butt treatment. And that is a good one. How do you not do that? Is that Chrislyn Wells? April's asking. Yes, it is April. That's Chrissy. And Brenda says, Kim, count yourself blessed. Many doctors today are just out for the money. I find that that's true for many people in general. That there's a kind of disregard for the human connection, that it's just kind of faded away. That whole concept of living in the world, not Jackson Brown has this song, I want to live in the world, not behind some wall. I want to live in the world. I want to hear if another voice should call. And so there's just this, we're all lost in our phones and we don't really want to talk to each other the way we used to. In restaurants we have terminals on the table to pay our tab. We can even order our food with them. Yet for some reason we're still tipping the waitress the same or more. That makes sense to you? But it is probably about time to wrap it up. Still no Midwest Mama. Really hoping to see you, Midwest Mama. Hoping hoping to see you here. But hopefully next time. We'll probably be doing a live event on Monday. We try to do a live event every Monday night. And actually even we try to make it a fentanyl related story every Monday night and we can look back at the week and talk about what happened in the last week relating to fentanyl in the news and any breakthroughs, any changes in how things are going, whatever. But it is going to be about time to wrap things up for tonight. We have been here over an hour, just over an hour and 1 minute it says, and so that's close enough to being over an hour. But is there any questions before we wrap things up? Is there any final questions that anyone would like to present to me about Texas Pictures or about our fentanyl series or our recovery series? Any of the stories on our channel? Glad to answer any questions before we wrap things up. But I think, Brenda, I think you're very much on target there about it's just being about the money. Yeah. But it's not just doctors who work that way. In some ways, I guess you can look at it as a kind of absolute because if your goal is just money, then you know when you've hit a milestone. If your goal is something else, like being a better person or helping other humans or something like that, how do you follow that? Stacy says, I learned about cannabis psychosis from you, Glenn. Great to know about it. Thank you. Well, thank you. I learned about it from making stories about it. That's how I learned about it. Some wonderful people uh, helped us get together some storytellers and made it happen. And another thing I learned from the cannabis series, which we're still working on. Anytime we get a cannabis story, we're still certainly still doing them. Same with fentanyl stories and addiction recovery and human trafficking and all the others. But another thing that I learned with the cannabis stories is, holy cow, there is some very outspoken people who will leap to the defense of cannabis. And their comments are easy to find, easy to spot, because they're a whole lot more likely to contain misspelled words. I mean, that's a thing. A lot more likely to contain misspelled words. They're also a lot more likely to make 5 comments in a row rather than organizing them into one comment, one longer comment thing. Sin. Ooh, and another thing. Sinned. Ooh, and another thing. And they can't spell. So, just a peculiar thing I've noticed. And I see Brenda's wonderful message here. What you take for granted, someone else is praying for. What you take for granted, someone else is praying for. And the point of that is about how important it is to be grateful. We all have things in our lives to be grateful about. All of us. Regardless of what's going on with you, there's still things to be grateful about. You're still drawing breath. You still have people who care about you. You have a future. So, Viola, Brenda, Kimberly, thank you so much. April, thank you so much. The cream relieves the pain, so I don't have to use OB. What? The cream relieves the pain. Did I miss something? Are you talking about ice cream? Are you putting ice cream on your joints, April? You're not. It's some, I'm guessing, cannabis cream, THC cream, CBD cream. You know, the biggest point of the cannabis series on our channel is that there needs to be more understanding. We're not really taking a side. There's three stories on our channel that are about full extract cannabis oil being used as an effective treatment against brain tumors in little children. Understanding is what's not there. And there's tons of research. The research is there. There's a lot of research, and the research consistently finds the same problems, the same dangers with cannabis. And dangers don't mean anything other than the dangers exist. Just like there's dangers when you drive a car. There's dangers to alcohol. There's dangers to food with a lot of fat or food with a lot of sugar. All those dangers exist. Talking about the dangers of cannabis, they're not, that's not saying do away with cannabis. It's saying understand that there's dangers. It's not stupid. Denying the dangers exist, that's kind of stupid. And it really it baffles me because there is this limited understanding, and I've seen it on both sides. I've seen cannabis defenders and cannabis. I don't know. You wouldn't really call them opposition, but they're ones who oppose cannabis, who want more legislation, want more restrictions. It's not regulated the way you think it is. It's not. It's nothing like the way alcohol is regulated. But the people on both sides get very passionate and use some of the same arguments. It's kind of tragic. I've tried to talk with physicians, medical doctors, and when you hear when you say something to them about cannabis being used medicinally, typically there's this wall that goes up, and they're just not listening anymore. Instead, they're not listening to understand; they're listening to find holes in whatever I'm saying or whoever's saying. And same thing happens the other way around when cannabis defenders are listening to someone talking about the dangers or the dangers they encountered. They're just listening for places to find holes. It's weird. Hit the X in the top right and you'll see the like button, or you can do it after. April's got it figured out. Babil says, I am too. Thank you. Chandler, the issue with cannabis thing is that they're not considering the problem with social media and predatory technology. They're not considering that when they put out the data, I do not have a like button to push. Pretty sure it's the shadow band hates me right now. What have you done? You're probably in some sort of trouble, aren't you, Chrissy? You got some sort of internet police coming down on you and just giving you all kinds of grief. So April said THC affects people differently, for sure. And much like fentanyl can do, the depending on where it's coming from, how it's made, whether I don't have any idea, I don't have any exposure to creams or how they're made, but material you get in that you can get in dispensaries, the THC content that's on the label doesn't have to be accurate. It has to be within a range that's broad. It is definitely underregulated. There's no protections. Like alcohol is heavily regulated. Alcohol alcohol has to comply with a lot of rules and regulations. And cannabis, uh, the cannabis lobby says they do, but that's just not accurate. I'm not going to that good bad argument. Anyway, it is about time to wrap things up. I stirred up a ruckus, is what I did. Yeah, gosh, I don't know where that accent came from. Chrissy doesn't talk like that, but you just read that sentence, you find yourself, you got to go a little cowboy on it or a little redneck on it or something. I stirred up a ruckus. That's what I did. You betcha. Anyway, folks, it is time to wrap it up for tonight. And I want to thank you all for being here. And I always like to remind you folks that we're here for you. We really are here for you. You're welcome to reach out to us anytime. And we'll always do what we can to help. There is several ways to do that. You can email us at info@texas-pictures.com. You can find us on Facebook under my name, Glenn Muse, or our company name. Of course, see, there goes the dogs again. And you can also learn more about us on our website, texas-pictures.com. You can find a link on the homepage that explains how to share your story. There's a link to our merchandise store, and there's more information about us on our website, like mailing address, information about how we got started, and other kinds of work that we do and all that cool stuff. So thank you no, I'm sorry. Stacy Michaels says, that's what I understood, Glenn. Dispensaries are not necessarily regulated in regard to true content. That's correct, Stacy. That is I say that's correct. That is what that's what I'm told. That's what I'm told by regulatory agents, by people like DEA representatives and physicians and researchers. Anyway, so, and there's more information about us on our website. So thank you all again for joining us. And our next live event should be Monday night. Good night for now, folks.